dump or don't say a word. Move my head around like a startled bird. Can't do housework when I choose. When I win, I convince myself I lose. Fabric feels weird against my skin. I gotta hold my breath when I take out the bin. Can't go out cause it's too hot and bright. I can't sleep at night cause there's too much light. The bees in my brain won't let me speak. My thought process is quite unique. The mask comes off and now I'm weird. Everything is as I feared. Living in this world can be quite a chore. We've all had enough, but we still want more. Leave me alone. I don't want interference. Hey, not, mate. That's your autistic experience. Welcome to the Autistic Experience, your one-stop shop for neurodivergent news, commentary, and general weirdness. My name's Kieran, as always joined by Chloe.
Hey.
Hi. New episodes come out every Sunday at midday British time, and in the meantime, when you're not listening to us, you can always go follow us on Instagram at the Autistic Experience. It is currently the 8th of October 2023, and for the first time and the last time, we are joined by a very, very special guest, our foster guinea pig, Edison. Hello, Edison. Now, Edison, I understand it's your first time on a podcast, is that right? And how are you finding the experience so far? Now, we've brought you on today, Edison, because you are not going to be living with us for very much longer, only a couple of days now, because you've been adopted and you're moving off to your forever home to go live with a new girlfriend. How does that make you feel? I'm going to assume that means excited. Chloe, I was saying this morning that I'm fairly confident that there's quite a disproportionate population of autistic people within guinea pig owners. Because, you know, we're not technically owners, but we're fosters. We look after a lot of guinea pigs.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, about 80% of the people we've had adopt guinea pigs, because they've all more or less been adults.
Yeah.
They've all been kind of autistic, or at least presented as such.
Yeah.
And we were chatting earlier and discussed that there's quite a lot of similarities between guinea pigs and autistic people, on the basis that when guinea pigs are uncomfortable and a bit scared, they kind of shy away and go hide somewhere. We do that. When they're comfortable, they can get real chatty.
Yeah.
And real weird, just like us. And when guinea pigs get excited, they start popcorning, and that's quite similar to kind of stimming.
Yeah.
Like when you can't quite process excitement in a way, and you just start vibrating.
There's definitely some traits that are kind of linked with autism or kind of related things that you can see in most of the people that we've met for guinea pig adoptions. But I think just the fact that they're so small and manageable, but also cuddly, and they're pretty independent. You know, they're like their own sort of space, and they're happy to chill on their own. I think it just makes them nice. They're kind of nice companions for autistic people like ourselves.
Yeah,
They're not overwhelming to look after, but they also provide company.
they do. But then also, you explaining to me earlier the idea of cute aggression.
Yes.
If you don't know what cute aggression is, just, Chloe, would you mind just giving a quick rundown?
Quick rundown. Yes. So it was only really named recently, but it's been around for a long time, and it's kind of like that innate response that I think a lot of people, or most people, have when they see something cute, like a cute animal or, you know, a cute baby, and you kind of just want to squeeze it or like pinch the cheeks or bite it or anything like that. That's kind of cute aggression. And the theory at the moment, vaguely, is that when you see a cute thing, it kind of overwhelms certain parts of your brain, which is kind of like the emotional centers and the reward centers. And if you think in terms of evolution, if you had a baby that was cute and you were just overwhelmed by how cute it was to the point where you couldn't deal with it, like you wouldn't be able to look after that baby. So the brain kind of throws out this almost aggressive signal to kind of dampen that overwhelming response a little bit so you can still kind of deal with it, basically.
Yeah. But that kind of got us thinking a bit further into this link between guinea pigs and autistic people, in that if you see a cute animal and it stimulates like the emotional centers of the brain, but if it also triggers the reward part of the brain, so that's dopamine as a chemical, right?
Mm.
In brains like ours, autistic ADHD brains, typically dopamine starved, right? So we don't necessarily get dopamine from like interacting with other people, for example.
Yeah.
If we get that from cute little animals or like, guinea pigs, which are basically just fluffy, squidgy potatoes, and by extension, them making their noises and guinea pigs weak quite a lot if they're excited. From that, we get not only a sensory tactile trigger for it, there's an audio trigger for it as well.
Yeah.
So I think hanging out with those animals, especially the more vocal ones, that we can A, have an emotional connection to, and B, get that dopamine from, then that does, I think, go some way to explaining how we form closer attachments to animals than we do people.
Yeah.
And also how we're so like emotionally invested in them.
Yeah. I think you also don't get the negative effects with animals that you tend to get from social interaction with other people, like feeling kind of judgment or overwhelmed with too much going on. So you don't get that maybe cancelling out some of the positives as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like animals are just kind of judgment free and peaceful most of the time. And so you just get the joy.
Yeah. We'll start the show properly now. That was just a little tangent just to meet Edison. We're going to start, as always, with our home news segment in which we just go over what's happened in the last week. Now, we teased this last week, and we did a thing. It was quite tiring, but I'll let Chloe explain how we got dragged into it.
Well, I didn't get dragged into it. I actually volunteered for it. So it was Planet Patrol, if you know them, are kind of running a sort of countrywide event at the moment, which is part of their sort of ongoing fight to help improve UK water quality. So the point is to do a big old paddleboarding relay running from the south of England, so just outside of London, all the way up to the Lake District. So they're using the same board, the same paddle, and they're taking it all the way along one continuous waterway with a series of volunteers along the way to kind of test the water quality and provide readings on, litter and things like that. So I volunteered to be a kind of guide for it because I work in water sports. So I volunteered to do the section between Eccles and Wigan. So about a 24-kilometre stretch of canal I was going to paddle as a guide alongside 3 volunteers who were going to be sort of doing the water testing. I was just there to keep them going and take pictures.
Yeah, and to, more importantly, act as safety, just in case something went wrong.
To be a safety person, because you can't have somebody paddling in the middle of nowhere on their own.
No.
Like, you never know what might happen. So I was going to do that. And then, for one reason or another, the 3 volunteers I was meant to be escorting all dropped out quite close to the day. And Kieran very kindly said that if needs be, he could just come and paddle alongside, do the whole thing. You know, we're leaving from the same house, we'd be coming back to the same house. It's not exactly difficult for us both to do it together. And that's kind of what ended up happening because they didn't find other people to substitute.
Yeah.
So he definitely got dragged into it. I volunteered stupidly.
Well, the thing is, I've done quite a lot of paddling in the past. So within scouting, for example, I did a lot of kayaking and canoeing. In the last couple of years with you at the Water Sports Centre, I also worked there for a spell last year. So I've done a decent amount of paddleboarding.
Mm-hmm.
However, you listening to this, you're probably just imagining that it's maybe a couple of kilometers, maybe a couple of miles, maybe 5 miles tops. That's quite... So if you imagine walking, that's quite a long way. That's quite a long walk.
Yeah.
Not quite, no. Because we ended up paddling 23 kilometers?
Yeah, 15 miles.
Which is about 15 miles, which is a little bit over a half marathon.
Yeah, well, put it this way, we actually got on the boards to start at about 9:30 in the morning, and we didn't get to the end and get off the boards again properly until about 5:30.
Yeah, and aside from a brief, we had like maybe a 5-10 minute break to do test water qualities, and then we had a 15-minute break for lunch.
Yeah.
Maybe total of a half an hour not paddling. So
Yeah.
that's 7.5 hours of paddling.
Like an average working day.
Yeah,
of
just
continuous paddling.
continuous paddling. So if you just imagine how hard you think it would be to just get up one day and run a half marathon, do that with your arms.
Yeah.
I have so much more respect for people who do marathons in wheelchairs now.
I know.
Like, woof.
Like, I paddleboard every week for a few hours. And then I also do some extra work at the Water Sports Centre, which involves a lot of, like, manual work. And that was hard.
Yeah.
Really hard. And
Well,
I
yeah,
paddleboard
because it's 8
weekly.
hours.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, I only do about 2 hours of paddleboarding every week, but...
And you're not exactly trying to get anywhere. You're
it was
just
difficult.
splashing around, jumping in. We're trying not to fall in
Yeah.
because, spoiler alert, the water quality is awful.
Yeah, it was stinky and brown, and every test came back pretty much bad.
Mm-hmm.
We had to do a test for coliform bacteria, which is like poo bacteria, and that came back positive, which was really unsettling.
Yeah, we did that underneath a bridge in Lee.
Yeah.
So if you're over that direction, don't go in the water.
Stay away from it. Just to quickly round that out, that it was very hard and it was a challenge, but it was really cool to do. It's quite an achievement, I think, and I hope that our results go some way to helping with improving water quality. The fact that we were kind of part of helping it happen.
Or at least demonstrating how bad it is.
Yeah. You know, it was an adventure, and we're recovering now physically. I'm not so tired anymore, but it was very tough. I'm just proud of us for making it to the end.
Yeah.
There was a time when I thought we wouldn't.
So if you want to see like what we've been talking about, that we're not just making it up for whatever reason you can imagine, you can go find them on Instagram at On Planet Patrol.
Yeah.
I believe that's right. But yeah, that's home life.
Mm-hmm.
Our thighs are just about sorted.
They're solid as iron.
Yeah.
We've got steel thighs. Thighs of steel.
But now it's time to move on to neurodivergent news. And first up, we've got a little bit of an update for you, because if you listened to last week's show, you'll remember that we found a piece on the Northern Echo, which we kind of had a look at and came to the conclusion that it was not great in terms of its representation of neurodivergence, and it was painfully clear that the journalist didn't really understand what they were writing about. What we'll do now is we'll just play a little clip. One sentence this person's written, it says, in her speech, she outlined the challenges that people with autism and neurodivergence face in education, blah, 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 blah. Right? You don't have neurodivergence.
Yeah.
I mean, at the moment, it's personal preference as to whether you want to say you have autism or you are autistic. That's kind of personal preference at the moment. But you don't have a neurodivergence.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult to try and properly kind of put into words about why it shows a general non-understanding.
No, I know what you mean. Because it does say that it's a non-medical umbrella term that describes people with variation in their mental functions.
That sounds like it's just been Googled.
Yeah, sounds a bit weird.
So, first things first, when I was editing this episode last week, I, out of interest, Googled neurodivergence. And weirdly enough, the definition on Google was word for word the exact same that the journalists used. So, A, yes, it was Googled. B, they didn't bother changing any of it. They just stuck it right in there.
Zero effort.
It's like, this is what it is. Made no effort to understand it. Now, the reason we're bringing this up is because earlier today I came across a very interesting article. It's almost like the universe went, you know what? Here, have this. Because one of the things we said was that it is very difficult to put into words why it's such an issue that people just clump all the different neurodivergences into one.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, Psychology Today published an article, also by autistic authors. It gives you 5 things that everyone should understand about neurodiversity. And this article does say that neurodiversity, and by extension neurodivergence, is not just a euphemism for autism or ADHD.
Yeah.
Which is one of the things that article did do.
Yeah.
It tries to kind of just replace actual brain types with just this big umbrella, which, as we discussed last week, is not great.
Yeah. Makes neurodivergent a bit kind of wishy-washy and...
Yeah. So I'm just going to quote a little bit from the article here. It says, on the subject of just using like neurodiverse as a big old wishy-washy umbrella term, it says, this is not only a confusing and inaccurate use of terminology, but it perpetuates stigma by sending the message that it is not okay to use terms like autism and ADHD. Such use of language signals that a professional may be jumping on the neurodiversity bandwagon rather than deeply understanding the concept and embodying it in their clinical practice. So this is on the basis that if it's like a doctor or a psychologist just using neurodiverse as a thing rather than, being reported as news. But I think because of journalists theoretically should have standards as medical professionals do. So I think that's fair to compare their usage of language because it's important in both cases.
Well, you get a lot of people will see an article written by a journalist, and if that journalist isn't using the right words, then it's a lot of people that are gonna take that on board.
Yeah, the exact same thing happens with doctors because like the number of posts like on Reddit, for example, that are like, my doctor says that I can't be autistic because blah. It's someone who is in this position of authority, which you're told by society to listen to, that tells you you can't possibly be you because of some outdated reason that they think might be there.
Yeah.
Or that they think that being autistic is not okay or there's something wrong with you, and they're trying to say, oh no, there's nothing wrong with you at all because you do this. But that's not what we're trying to achieve.
Well, that's like in the article as well, just briefly, I really liked it where they kind of compare it to job roles that they said actually being autistic or having ADHD and having that different brain type, i.e. neurodiversity, is a lot like different people having different jobs. Like it says in the article that if everybody in the world was a plumber, like it would be awful because there'd be nobody to do anything else. But having a few plumbers, like those plumbers are really good and they serve a really good purpose. And it's exactly the same thing as like, autistic people have their own function and it's not the same as everybody else's, but it's still kind of valid.
Yeah, so that was published on the 5th of October on Psychology Today. This article, as well as all the others we're going to be talking about, will be available as references on our Instagram page at The Autistic Experience, so you can go and read them yourselves and make sure we're not leading you down the completely wrong rabbit hole. You know, you go down the wrong rabbit hole, next thing you know, you're next to a caterpillar smoking something funky.
The dream.
Okay, maybe that's the bad example.
For me, it's a bad example, yeah.
All right, next up, we're going to go and look into the world of music for this, because back in 1984, there was a concert film released of the band Talking Heads and their frontman David Byrne. And since then, by the way, the Talking Heads, you probably would recognize their song Once in a Lifetime, which I'm going to play about 2.5 seconds of, just so you go, oh yeah, that one. Yeah, that one. Yeah, David Byrne, their frontman, is autistic. There was this article on Little White Lies, lwlies.com, about, because there's been a re-release of the film Stop Making Sense, which is this concert film. I've told this set up in a very cyclical manner, so I hope you've been able to keep track of any of that. Yeah, there was an article written about this re-release and the idea that it's a very accurate representation of autism on screen. Now, you actually had a little watch of some of the film earlier, Chloe.
I tracked it down.
You tracked it down, so what did you think?
Well, I kind of skimmed through a lot of it just because I wanted to get an idea of the whole thing rather than just watching a certain point. And I can see some of the points that the article makes about how at the beginning he is sort of a lot calmer and the lyrics seem to link a bit more into like struggling with things and, you know, things being weird and things being hard. And then towards the end of it, things get a little bit more kind of upbeat and a little bit more unusual, a bit more crazy, you know. And the article sort of says that that's him going through like an unmasking process, which I could kind of see that. There's quite a few lyrics that I picked up on that were quite relatable with, you know, feeling weird, feeling out of place, or feeling like things are difficult. Overall, I think I'd probably have to watch it fully to get the full sort of link to autism. I found it a bit more like it was a bit relatable rather than it being sort of super mind-blowingly accurate. But again, I think that's just because I didn't necessarily watch the whole thing start to finish properly.
Yeah, I think it's probably also worth mentioning that the article is very much written as a kind of arts piece, right? So it takes little bits and it just analyzes them from an artistic perspective. You know, like you would do in like English, when you would just look at poetry and just take a tiny little point and expand it and just go, this is them trying to do this and that. And
yeah, which I'm not very good at. So I think that's probably why when they make certain points about the styling or of the clothes or the colours of the clothes or like the sort of more subtle things, they're not things that I would necessarily pick up on.
No, I would probably put it down as it was the 80s.
Yeah.
The clothes are so kind of weird. There's a certain amount of substance abuse going on in the music community, so
it's all very weird.
But yeah, as we said, if you want to read it yourself, see what you think, maybe if you can track down the film, it is still getting played in cinemas because it's a re-release. It's quite a limited run, so it's not like Oppenheimer where it was getting played like every half hour. It will be quite difficult to find, but should you wish, you can always go and see what this article calls a landmark in autistic representation on screen.
I'll probably watch the whole thing.
Staying on the music theme, our next story comes to us from over in America, where This has been kind of ongoing for some time, but I'm only bringing it up now because it seemed appropriate. There's this non-verbal 16 or 17-year-old in America who, for a long time, was kind of like in his head writing a symphony, so music, and working together with his dad, who is a music producer. They've kind of put together this symphony with musicians, and I think last weekend they had the actual concert. It's like a 70-minute symphony,
Yeah, like a
which
full.
is just long.
Yeah, like a decent amount.
But yeah, it's just a very interesting story because I think one of the things we can all recognize is that people often assume that we're not capable of certain things, either because we're autistic or because we just don't present our talents in the same way that other people do.
Yeah. Well, that's what I really liked about reading that, is there's quite a lot of points, even made by, I think, his dad, saying that they had no idea how capable he was because he was nonverbal for so long. They didn't know how much he was absorbing and how much knowledge he had. And, you know, the fact that he started learning how to express that by, was it typing on his iPad?
Yeah.
They then realised actually how much he, you know, was absorbing what was going on and how much he did know. And they realised that he was actually very intelligent. And, you know, it goes to show that people like that are really underestimated. And a lot of autistic people, I think, suffer from that. But being non-verbal doesn't help because people immediately assume that if you're non-verbal, you've got no idea what's going on, basically.
Yeah. It's the fact that our brains just work differently, which is the divergent part of neurodivergent.
Yeah, exactly. And from what I gathered from the article, his symphony went down very well. People really liked it, I think. I'm pretty sure there was a link to another article that shows a video of them getting like a full standing ovation from the audience.
Yeah.
It was like a sold out show as far as I read. It was pretty almost, if not sold out,
it's had
almost.
fairly strong media exposure, so that probably helped. But I also do, like, not to be cynical, because it is a really big achievement, but I have a feeling a fairly strong proportion of the audience will not see this as, you know, a capable young man writing a symphony. They'll see it as he managed to do this despite the fact that his brain doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not like just a musician coming out with a good symphony. It's almost like I will say this in inverted commas, a disabled person, you know, being able to do something like,
Yeah,
you know.
well, it's a bit of a crass analogy, but do you remember a number of years ago on Britain's Got Talent, there was a dog that could say sausages?
Yes.
It's like that.
Yeah, that's
Or
literally
people would
it,
see it like that.
Yeah, they don't see it as an achievement in itself. They see it from the perspective of, oh, wow, you know, this...
That's good for an autistic person.
Exactly. I'm surprised this person was capable of doing something like that.
Yeah.
Because they're autistic.
For me, anyway, you know, writing a 70-minute symphony is insane just in general. But I think the real success of this is working to translate all the music from your head, translating that into a full actual symphony.
Yeah. Like he had to kind of get the sounds that he was imagining into words for somebody to understand.
Yeah, so I think for me the translation of that is the most impressive part of it. But yeah, I think this does just show that I think especially the non-verbal autistic population get looked down on so much just because they can't speak.
Yeah.
But that's not emblematic of anything else.
Like their intelligence and their ability to take in everything that's going on around them. Like that's not affected.
Yeah, just because we can't necessarily do something that, quote, regular person can do easily, doesn't mean we can't do other things and do them well. Our final story for this episode is a piece on wellandgood.com. There's no date on it, but it's entitled You, Me and ADHD, How Dating Someone Else with ADHD Made Me More Sensitive Towards My Own Struggles and More Aware of My Strengths. So this is more of a blog post, but it is quite nicely written and corroborated with a clinical psychologist and a relationship therapist. So it kind of tells the story of, as you can imagine, these relationship, both of them with ADHD, and it kind of goes on to just kind of explain that, sometimes it can be difficult if both of you have ADHD, because stuff like, as I'm sure we can attest to, stuff like, paying bills, doing bins, cleaning, organization, all that sorts of things can be quite difficult.
Yep.
But I think for us anyway, this article does just kind of, there's a lot of what I would probably call like things in there, just things that are so obvious, like between you and me, that we wouldn't necessarily think to mention them. Like the idea that it mentions about like the sharing of decision making. Their example is like a box cutter that one of them keeps losing and then one puts in somewhere else, but then it keeps getting lost because they keep putting it in different places. And that the reason it kept getting lost is because together they did not decide where it should live. And that kind of is the key, is just having these shared decisions, shared logic processes, which help us keep each other on track. So like for us, actually one good example of the way we do things is cleaning our teeth in the evening, because that's one of the things I tend to really struggle with, kind of keeping the routine, that's the one, keeping the routine going on that. But because I tend to you like doing your teeth first for your own reasons, but like I send you off to go and do your teeth and then I go in after you.
Like a reminder.
So it's kind of me like telling you to go and do it, and then my brain is like, well, I may as well while I'm here.
I liked this post because I agree with quite a lot of it. There's a lot of stuff that's shared that kind of makes living with a partner with ADHD more comfortable. We've got our kind of differences in the way it presents that are also kind of beneficial to each other as well. Because I'm very restless, very impulsive, but you're very practical and kind of, you're just a bit more sensible and logical about things. Yeah, pragmatic I think is good. And so I'll come up with crazy ideas, but then you'll actually kind of help them happen, or be able to say, actually, no, that's not feasible. Whereas if I was just on my own, maybe I wouldn't do things properly, or I wouldn't do them, the best way, or I wouldn't do things at a sensible time, things like that. But then I think I give you the ideas because you don't necessarily come up with ideas or think of things that are as crazy as me.
No, I just make them work.
Yeah, exactly. So I give you the inspiration, but then you help it actually function. I agreed with her points as well about it teaching you about yourself. Her as with her partner and herself, you were diagnosed before me.
Yeah.
You started investigating it before I did. And actually learning about it through you going through a diagnosis has taught me more about myself and helps me kind of punish myself less for some of the weird things that I do.
So go look at that. All of these articles we'll put references to on our Instagram page at The Autistic Experience. So you can go find them, read them yourself, and see what you think. But for now, it's time to once again troll Reddit for our question of the week. Basically how this section works is that we delve into someone's personal life and provide unwarranted, but sometimes helpful advice.
I hope so.
That's the plan, anyway. So the title of this post is Me and Roommate, both autistic, but I can't stand talking to her. So the poster is diagnosed. It says the roommate is not diagnosed, but does suspect she's on the spectrum. She exclusively talks about herself and her interests. Like, I know this is a common autism thing, but it feels like pulling teeth when we talk. She really wants to be friends and hones in on me whenever we're both out of our rooms, but she makes zero effort to inquire about me and my life, so I'm confused. If I share anything at all, she will change the subject, but she monologues about the most mundane and also inappropriate details of her life constantly. It's at the point where I almost want to politely say something, but I don't know how. I already had to ask her to please stop interrupting me when I talk. Like, before that, I could barely get 2 words in. She clearly needs a friend, but again, god damn. So I've cut that down a fair amount from the original post. But basically the idea is that we've got these 2 autistic roommates. I'm assuming this reads as like an American college sort of situation. And that neither one of them are particularly interested in hearing about the other's life. Which is fine, you know. The roommate is kind of info dumping, and that's one of the ways we can try and connect to people. And the other one the poster just doesn't really care. So I think they're not really asking for anything, it's just a bit of a rant. But I think what they're trying to figure out is how to talk to their roommate about it without it blowing everything out of proportion.
I mean, I read this one as you say, the roommate is info dumping about their life because she's trying to reach out, she's trying to connect, she's trying to be friends. Like that's a way that sometimes we communicate. Also a way that we can communicate if we're feeling a bit awkward. It's just kind of talk. Maybe like they don't kind of express in the same way. And so she's trying to be friends, but the poster isn't getting that.
Yeah.
They kind of see it as being rude or disinterested when actually it's totally the opposite. Like the roommate is actually very interested in being friends and is really trying.
Yeah.
So I think maybe one of the best ways to resolve it would be to actually talk about it in that sort of direct. I don't really respond to the info dumping because she might just not be aware of it, or she might not know how to, communicate any other way. But equally, I would say that it's perfectly fine if you just don't like the person or you're not interested in the person.
Yeah, because it very much does read as though the poster just doesn't really have any interest in being their roommate's friend.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but the other person is actively making an effort.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to be friends, but part of the reason why the roommate might be dumping all this information and desperately just talking at you is because they want to build a connection and they don't feel like they're getting anything back.
Yeah, which is super ironic because poster says she makes zero effort to inquire about me and my life, so I'm confused. But also, they mentioned that they don't care about what this person's saying.
Yeah.
So it's like going, oh, this person's making no effort to ask about me and my life, but I'm also don't care about them.
Yeah.
So it's like throwing a snowball at someone and then getting mad when they throw it back.
Yeah. It seems like it's I don't want to be critical, but mainly like the poster is probably not actually giving the roommate what they need in terms of a response. And so the roommate just keeps dumping because they don't feel like they're getting anything back. And that leads to a bit of a vicious cycle in that they're dumping, they're not getting anything back. The poster feels like they're not being asked about themselves, so they get more disinterested and it just spirals.
Yeah. The answer, as with most of these, is communication.
Yeah, exactly.
But if the poster actually doesn't care about the roommate or what they're talking about or like being their friend, then they're kind of leading them on a bit because the roommate's not interpreting the response, because I doubt that the poster is going, oh yeah, tell me more.
Yeah.
They're just kind of go,
Yeah, and it's like they're reaching out, the roommate's reaching out to like a brick wall,
yeah.
and then they don't understand that, and so they just keep
They
dumping.
keep trying.
Yeah. And just, I think it'd be, in this situation, the poster needs to decide, like you say, do you actually want to be friends or
Yeah,
not?
that's
If you
pretty much
do, then communicate and try and give something back.
Yeah.
If you don't, then just stop entertaining it, basically.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just about it for question of the week. So we'll move on to upcoming events for this next week. Now, as always, we've had to cherry pick some of these events. They are only within the UK, just because the Google search would be a nightmare otherwise. And we're specifically looking at events aimed at providing a service or experience to autistic, ADHD, otherwise neurodivergent people, and not to parents and carers of. So, first up, happening tomorrow on October the 9th between 10 and 12 in the morning in Warrington, which is halfway between Manchester and Liverpool. It's the Creating Adventures Art Club. So this describes itself as a free, creative and inclusive art workshop for adults with autism and learning disabilities. The artwork created varies between abstract, mosaic, ceramics and decoupage.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, so that's 2 hours in the morning or tomorrow if you're around. It I think it is every week as well. So if you go to creatingadventures.org.uk, that's their site, so you'll be able to see that and all the other things they do throughout the week. Then on Tuesday, the 10th of October, if you're anywhere in the region of Sheffield, they're doing a South Yorkshire Hidden Disability Job Fair. So this is run by Autism Plus. It's at the Showroom Cinema in Sheffield City Centre. It's running between 12:30 and 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And yeah, it's more or less what it says. It's an opportunity to go to a jobs fair specifically for other folks with hidden disabilities. So that is free to attend as well if you're in the market for a job, or, well, let's look at the statistics. 78% of us are probably in the market for a job.
Yeah. Maybe these ones would be a bit better for you.
Maybe. But yeah, if you're in Sheffield, that's happening on Tuesday. On Wednesday, Autism West Midlands are doing a Herefordshire and Worcestershire Wellbeing Walk meetup for autistic adults between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. I believe they're visiting a National Trust site. I can't quite spot which one, but I'm sure if you go to autismwestmidlands.org.uk, you'll be able to find out the full details for yourself. But importantly, it says there is no expectation to talk or socialise, and you're welcome to bring along any support tools you need.
Love that. Love that.
I wish more places had that line.
I know, yeah.
Brilliant. And then finally on the 11th of October again, so Wednesday, this one's also free to go to. So it's a free across the board
lovely
event.
We love that.
We do. So this is in between 4:30 and 5:45 in Lanark, which it's the third point on a right angle triangle with Glasgow and Edinburgh.
Okay.
That description does make a lot of sense. If you look at it and see the laptop there.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a very weird way of describing it, but it's accurate. And that is the autistic experience in a nutshell. But yeah, it's an autism-friendly arts and crafts group taster session. So this is run by the National Autistic Society of South Lanarkshire. So I imagine if you Googled National Autistic Society South Lanarkshire events, maybe, you'll probably find the full details for that. But yes, those are some of the events coming up in the next week. Completely free across the board by the looks of things. I didn't hear what you said.
said very nice, but in my head I'm thinking, go get that free art.
Yeah.
You could get that free walk.
And that sadly brings us to the end of this episode of The Autistic Experience. Join us next week for more news, more commentary, more events, more weirdness.
We'll see where it takes us.
We'll see where it takes us, yeah. New episodes, of course, will come out next Sunday at midday British time. And in the meantime, you can go follow us on Instagram, where we have references to all the events and articles we talk about. So that is at The Autistic Experience. Then, of course, all that's left to say is, you go get that free lunch.
Go get that free lunch.